Episode 6, Part 2. They were 10 miles out from the coast when the ship's sensors began to scream. It started as a low vibration in the deck plates, a thrumming that rattled the coffee cups in the bridge. Then came the sound, a growing, tearing static that bled through the ship's speakers, getting louder and more intense with every nautical mile. "Sam! Look at the helm!" The digital compass was spinning wildly. The radar screen was a kaleidoscope of white noise. The GPS plotter flickered and died.
Day 13, Lucky 13. They were 10 miles out from the coast when the ship's sensors began to scream. "Take the wheel," Sam ordered. "Keep her steady. I need to see what they aren't showing us." Sam ran below deck, sprinting to his personal quarters. He tore open a locked footlocker and pulled out 2 items he had scavenged years ago from a maritime museum: a heavy darkened welder's mask and a bulky dusty headset with a trailing wire, an ancient analog radio receiver. He ran back to the bridge, jamming the headset over his ears and hoping it would come alive, and it did. Sliding the welder's mask over his face, Sam commanded, "Turn off the bridge lights." Plunged into darkness, Sam looked out through the thick tinted glass of the welder's mask. The world changed. The gray fog vanished, filtered out by the darkened lens. In its place, he saw them. Rays of piercing blue light were cutting through the gloom, emanating from tall, jagged antennas lining the shore. They were invisible to the naked eye, but through the filter they looked like lasers. Sam turned the dial on the analog headset. Through the static, he found it. A rhythmic, pulsing screech. Scree-thump. Scree-thump. He closed his eyes for a second, a memory flashing in his mind. Old lighthouses. He remembered pictures of them, beacons meant to guide ships to safety, to warn them of the rocks. "These aren't lighthouses," Sam whispered, watching the blue beams crosshatch over the water. "They're sirens. They're designed to crash whatever ships are left. They scramble to the computers and lure you into the wreckage." "Sam, you can't see." "I can hear the path," Sam grunted. He steered the Fahrenheit 451 by the seat of his pants. He watched the blue rays through the mask. When the static in his ears pitched up to a high whine, he spun the wheel hard to port, dodging a submerged highway support. When the frequency dropped to a low rumble, he corrected to starboard, narrowly missing the jagged spire of a sunken church that had floated out to sea. He was navigating by the music of the trap itself. "Hard left," Sam roared, wrestling the hydraulics. The ship groaned, leaning heavily as it skirted a massive dark shape in the water, the submerged ruins of the Brooklyn Bridge. For 3 hours, Sam didn't blink. He was a conductor of chaos, steering 70,000 tons of steel through a minefield of sound and light, guiding them through the only gap blue beams didn't touch. They limped northwest at 10 knots, the Fahrenheit 451 groaning as it cut through the heavy swells. The closer they got to land, the stranger the world became. The sky wasn't just overcast, it was sick. Low-hanging clouds swirled in unnatural geometric patterns. The ocean, usually teeming with life, was dead silent. No gulls, no porpoises riding the bow wave, just the rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum of the ship's engines. Sim stayed on the bridge with his father, the binoculars pressed to his eyes. On the morning of the 14th day, the fog began to lift. "There," Sim whispered to himself. The port of New York City. The ship broke through the final ring of sludge and slipped into open gray water. The silence that followed was heavy and mournful. The fog lifted slowly, revealing the destination. They drifted past the Verrazzano-Narrows Bridge. It was broken in half, the suspension cables hanging like severed tendons in the water. And then they saw her, the Statue of Liberty. She was no longer standing proud. The rising sea levels of the last 20 years had swallowed her pedestal. The water lapped at the hem of her copper robes. Her face was streaked with bird lime and rust, weeping oxidation tears. Her torch arm was gone, snapped off at the shoulder, likely struck by lightning or a drone strike years ago. She stood waist deep in the harbor, a broken hostess, less like a symbol of freedom and more like a drowning victim gasping for air. She looks tired, Sim said, standing beside Sam on the bridge. She looks like us, Sam replied grimly. Beyond the statue, the skyline of Manhattan rose like a rotting jawbone. The famous skyscrapers were shells. The Empire State Building was a blackened needle. The Chrysler Building was stripped of its chrome. Vegetation crawled up the sides of the towers, reclaiming the stone. But in the center of the ruin, stark and terrifying, stood the Tower of the Mind. It was pristine. It glowed with a soft, rhythmic blue light, untouched by the decay around it. It hummed with a power that made the fillings in Sam's teeth ache. Cynthia walked onto the bridge. She looked at the dead city and then at the ship full of families below deck. "We made it," she whispered, "out of the trash and into the fire." Sam gripped the wheel. "Take us to the docks, Sim. Find a berth that hasn't collapsed. We're going ashore." The Fahrenheit 451 sounded its horn, a low, mournful blast that echoed off the empty canyons of New York City, announcing that humanity had returned.
Episode 7. Into the Dead Giant, soon to be released. The ship has finally arrived at the ruins of NYC, and the adventure is about to get heavy. Sam, Sim, and Cynthia must leave the safety of the vessel and start their perilous journey toward the great Tower of the Mind. New alliances are forming, and the danger is real. Hang onto your seats. The journey is suicide. The streets are waterways. The buildings are unstable, and we do not know what defenses the RI Mind has deployed. The streets aren't just flooded. They're distinct channels. The currents between the buildings will be treacherous. Sim looked at his father, realizing the finality of the order, but he didn't argue. He thought to himself, it's him and his dad against all odds, but they are in the game. The nightmare begins. Episode 7, Into the Dead Giant.